Fiance, and I was about to get married when he showed his true colors, starting to yell at me and even violated me. He tried to manipulate me with wedding, so I called it off. Using a dating app, I, a 29-year-old Canadian woman, met my 29-year-old Egyptian-Canadian fiancé in the beginning of 2021, but we previously had mutual friends at the same institution. I fell in love with him right away and we got engaged a year later. After 2 months, we had a stunning Islamic ceremony. It was only the close family and very little. In 1 week, 4.5 months after the ceremony, is our wedding reception. We're clearly under a lot of stress because we're working so hard to make the wedding happen so soon after we bought our first house. My partner has a new job, and I work at a position that is well known for being stressful. To be honest, I haven't been my best self lately because I'm struggling to make ends meet and get by each day. Let's move on to the warning sign. My fiancé is a charming and humorous man. He's quite noisy. And so am I. I have always been fond of his personality ever when we first met. However, there has been less humor and more political commentary lately, occasionally focusing on right-wing conspiracy theories, or what I would refer to as conspiracy theories. It's prescriptive. Whenever I interact, it turns into a brawl rather fast, no matter what position I adopt. When I criticize his tone and personal attacks, I receive threats or accusations that I'm deliberately defaming him. He's begun to yell at me more frequently. It was in front of his entire family today. It was degrading. I sobbed. When his family informed me that they had already created the seating arrangement for their guests, even though they did not have the whole guest list, I was done shoving back. I didn't mean to come across as impolite when I said that I needed to finish the draft I had because I knew it included every attendee. I was telling her that if I made a mistake, she could change the tables. My fiancé abruptly interrupted me from the other room, yelling at me for claiming that his mother wasn't aware of everyone's arrival. Subsequently, he exclaimed that we were shouting, not him. I confronted him about his immaturity, even though I know I shouldn't have. He was shouting in front of our nephews, 9, 7, 1, so I called him out on it. If he was going to yell, I told him to keep out of it. We completed the seating arrangement, and because we were visiting from out of town, I departed to stay with my folks. I haven't heard from my fiancé in the 5 hours since the incident. I said farewell to everyone, including my fiancé, with a short hug before leaving. I wasn't walked to my car by him. At home, too, he's been yelling at me more. I steer clear of some subjects completely. Once things became physical, and he wrapped his fingers around my throat. He sincerely apologized for this, attributing it to his displeasure with my forgetfulness during one of our arguments. He pushes me occasionally, which makes me feel really uncomfortable in public. He pushes me aside when I try to pay at the shop, even though we usually switch who pays. My parents don't behave that way toward one another, as I have stated. I've let him know that's not how I want to be handled. I've told him clearly to don't shout at me, don't push me, and I've even threatened to tell his elder brothers about it. Though I'm sure there are a number of reasons why I'm particularly angry right now. Wedding stress, menstruation not praying, work stress. I'm beginning to wonder that I may be purposefully obliging. Is it okay if I ignore this and hope for better? What other actions can I take to promote change? Do you think that this is a stress reaction? In this case, what would you suggest your sister do? Edit to make the throat grab scenario more clear. We got into a heated verbal argument because I thought he hadn't consulted me before quitting his previous job and I was under a lot of financial stress. The problem is that I was there to support him when he brought it up to me earlier, and then I forgot. My memory deteriorates when I don't eat enough, something I'm trying to change. He grabbed me, instantly released his hold, and turned to walk away as I was yelling at him, and he was yelling at me. I felt enraged and horrified when we discussed it. He made the point that even though what he did was terrible, he followed the right course of action and stopped and left. I was just upset. He essentially stopped it at scaring me. I wasn't hurt in any way. I understand he was really irritated that I was yelling at him over something I had happily accepted only a few days earlier. But it was still wrong that he did it, and he has apologized. Comments were overwhelmingly telling OOP to leave, sister. It seems like you don't think well of yourself. While it's good to have a man in the house, you should realize that you are more than capable of supporting and stabilizing yourself. You can be your own strong and stable. Because they have the mistaken notion that they can't have XYZ in their lives or be XYZ without a guy, women who lack self-worth and self-belief are frequently the main targets of abuse. In actuality, stability can be established within you. You are not a little person. You sound like you have incredible friends and family that adore and care for you. So you aren't alone. You are also quite big and strong. OP replied, I'm grateful. Although they were distinct from one another, what you've described is accurate, and this is my second set of significant relationship problems. My high school love was the first. We dated for 8 years after high school, but we parted ways after I realized he was abusing alcohol and that it was seriously harming me. He was a secret drinker. I have therefore had to out myself to my family twice after being in too deep in a precarious scenario. For whatever reason, I'm definitely prone to this, and I need to work on myself to make sure it doesn't happen again. I attend a dance course. I'm going to start writing and creating art again. I'm going to concentrate on making improvements to the house we own because I should enjoy living there, or because I will eventually need to sell and making improvements will help. Update. I slept at my folks' house last night. My fiance was not in contact when I woke up. Around 9 in the morning, I gave him a call to see whether he would be attending the photographer's appointment. I picked him up, and we headed to that together after he said yes. We merely exchanged pleasantries and questions like "Where's the appointment?" and "Thanks for getting the gas." We left the city after the photographer's appointment and drove the hour back to our hometown. I mentioned that we needed to talk about yesterday's fight approximately 20 minutes into the ride. "What is it that we need to discuss?" he asked. "That you screamed at me in front of your family to begin with," I said. Since he didn't seem to want to talk, I went on and told him that I would no longer put up with being yelled at. I've made it obvious that I won't put up with it since it is rude. He became agitated and began to resist. He's stressed, and I was trying to figure out how to arrange his side of the seating arrangement, so I yelled too. I told him it doesn't matter why you're yelling. That's not the point. I will no longer put up with being yelled at. I can't continue to live my life with someone who mistreats me. This has to change. "Well, I'm not changing, so call off the wedding then," he remarked. He quickly recanted that, but not before I made a call to my father face to face. I phoned my dad and told him straight out that ever since moving in with my fiancée, he has been verbally abusing me more and more. I also informed him about the pushing in public and the throat grab. My fiancée was talking softly next to me as I was telling my dad this. "Really? Are you truly including them in this?" "In my ear, etc." I ignored him and concentrated on talking to my dad. That was revealing. My dad and I came up with a safety plan after I told him everything. When we arrived in our city and after my fiancé departed, I gave him another call. My father tells me that I don't have to go through with the wedding and that usually, abuse just gets worse. I told my dad that I wasn't sure if I should go ahead with the wedding, and he said he thought that was the right thing to do in this situation. He also reminded me that decisions don't have to be made today. "Are you calling you mom or am I?" I questioned my dad when I'd gotten on the phone. He instructed me to. I contacted his older brother instead. His parents are old. He talked to us briefly over the phone after I told him everything. He was criticizing his brother's behavior and seemed confused by what I had told him. When we arrive home, my fiancé is gushing into my ear about how we're not divorcing or calling off the wedding, that he's sorry, and that he will go counseling and other such things. Someone calls us. His mother and older brother are en route to our city to serve as mediators. I immediately gave my parents a call. The notion of his family conducting a mediation did not sit well with them. Although I was less concerned because I have a lot of faith in my oldest brother-in-law, I still felt it was appropriate to phone a friend to provide support. My pal was the first to arrive. In front of my fiancée, I told her what I had told my parents. She broke up some arguments and made it clear that my fiancé was downplaying the number of times he touched me. She made the point that since my fiancé had steadfastly and again declared up until this point that he would not take part in counseling, it makes logical that I don't trust him to change. I wandered around the yard with my friend until my mother-in-law and brother-in-law showed up. We all sat in the living room when they arrived. The ground rules of not interjecting were set by my Bill. I tried to make my narrative as clear as possible. I looked at the threats my fiancé had written to me, which I had typed into my phone notepad. I clarified that despite my repeated requests over several months, my fiancé would not consent to counseling. My fiancé was then asked by my BIL if he agreed with what I had said. The reason my fiancé grabbed my throat, according to him, was that she kinda ran, charged me, and I put my hand out to stop her, but yes, I did. So I made it clear. I corrected him, saying, "No, you grabbed my throat because you were angry with me during our argument. I wasn't aiming for you, and you weren't attempting to avoid me or show fear of me." "Is that true?" inquired his brother. My fiancé gave in as well. At this point, my Bill declared that the violence was unacceptable. He suggested that canceling the Saturday reception wouldn't be a huge concern since either the relationship needs to terminate or we need to work on it for a long time to fix the issues and decide whether a healthy relationship can ever be formed. He was very clear that he would back anything I choose to do going forward and that he would make sure I didn't have to pay off the entire wedding debt. I now have a lot of vendor bills on my credit cards. My Bill and I discussed converting the wedding location into a family reunion place for all of his family members who would be flying in, while my fiancé packed his bags to return to his family home. My mother-in-law gave me a hug, a kiss, and a declaration of love. I'm snuggled up in bed with my cat like a stunned potato right now. My companion informed me about my changes and my decreased self-assurance since moving in with my fiancé as we strolled around the yard. She reassured me that she and her fiancé support me and are happy that I advocated for myself. Praise God for wise companions.